What's up YouTube? So today for this vlog it's going to be a little bit different. I wanted to go over a subject that I've had a lot of people on Snapchat asking me, how did I get started? Well, I'm going to explain to you in a 5-minute video from the beginning, from the first time I ever had a camera until the moment as of today. So sit back and relax and enjoy this vlog. If you're not into the talking videos, I'll see you guys tomorrow in my next video. If you want to hear more about how I got started, this is probably the video for you. Let me start from the very beginning. When I was about 8 years old, my father had gotten sick, and he was sick for a span of like 8 years and progressively had gotten worse. He had passed away when I was 14 years old, and that was when my whole life had changed completely. And when I say changed completely, it was literally from me living in Michigan to living in a whole new life out in San Diego, California. The main reason for the move was to basically have a fresh start with my mother in a new city where the weather was much better and there was no snow. And the best place to go that we could think of was San Diego. She had some family out here, so we came out to San Diego and started a whole new life. One of the things that had happened during the process of my father passing away was I was given a camera as a gift from my mother, and that was kind of where everything started. It was a gift that was just for fun. It was a point and shoot camera that was like $100 from Walmart, a Kodak point and shoot, and it was just something to get me started just for fun, and I didn't think it would turn into a career or a passion. It was just like, hey, here's a camera, have some fun. So as time went on, I just kind of took photos around the area. Since I was living in San Diego when I had the camera at first, I would just go around my apartment complex where I had lived or where I was living in the moment, and I would just take photos. It really kind of started with flowers and like cars that were parked at my apartment, which a lot of people were confused why I was taking photos of their cars at a parking lot, but it kind of was like what I wanted to get started with, and it was just all that I could really shoot. There was one day that I remember very, very well. I was struggling very hard as a kid with my mother, and one night she had taken me out for a drive just to go around to see the city, and we drove by this place that I had no idea what would be my future. I had no idea that it would really be where my home is and was. I remember driving down Pearl Street in La Jolla, and there was a Lotus sign on the side of a building, and I was like, holy crap, I know that logo. It's from my game Need for Speed. So I told my mom, I was like, you have to go check this place out, please take me there. So we drive up to this dealership, and I'm like blown away. I saw 2 Bugatti Veyrons, I saw like Lambos, Bentleys. We pulled in the parking lot, and I remember seeing a silver McLaren SLR, and I kid you not, I started crying because I had never ever thought that I would ever see those cars in person, and they were right in front of me. So they were closed because it was nighttime, so I had to go back the next morning. Went back the next morning, and I went in there not knowing that like anyone was allowed in there. I just was kind of hesitant, but I walked in there and they were very nice, very polite. I walked around and looked at the cars, and I was hooked. And I realized, I said, you know what? Why don't I bring my camera into this dealership and start taking photos of the cars if they allow it? And of course they didn't care, they allowed it. I came back a few more times, and I really fell in love. I was hooked on it. Taking photos of cars was my escape from my father passing away and the depression that I was dealing with and the current life struggle, and the camera really took me away from all the crap that I was dealing with. So that's when it all began. I just started going back to that dealership over and over again. I started going to high school just like 3 blocks up from the dealership that I was always going to, and I met somebody who is now my best friend, Andy Gibbs. We were both, I think, 14 at the time or 15, and we hated each other. We had a big drama issue, typical freshman year of high school, and then we ended up becoming best friends, and we just started saying, hey, let's go check out the dealership together, let's go look at cars. So we'd go to this dealership every single weekend or every Friday and just go look at cars, just to hang out. And eventually, after doing that for so long, I'd walk in there with a camera, and the people who worked there started to recognize me, and they remembered my name and who I was. Now personally, I don't know how I still have this, but I asked for Christmas one year like an upgraded camera from a point and shoot. This was my first camera, and I've never shared this with anybody. This is what had gotten me started, a Sony DSC H1. And I remember this so well when I first got it for Christmas, and we were like struggling so hard to even like pay rent, and somehow my mom managed to get that for me, which changed my whole life. Fast forward a few years, so 14 years old, that camera, going to the dealership, depression, sad, upset, didn't have many friends. By the time that I was 17 and a half or 18, every single weekend I was going to car shows on Saturday mornings at Crystal Cove at Cars and Coffee Irvine, at the symbolic original open house, HRE open house, SoCal Euro, all those big car shows in San Diego I was attending, and Carlsbad Car Show was really what I'd attend the most because it was the closest and it was the most variety. I started joining online forums. I joined a few different Lambo forums, bunch of BMW stuff, and what I would do is every car show I would go to, I'd take photos of every car, go on the forums, go on MySpace, go Zynga, wherever. I'd post my photography, and then the owners would see them or people would see them and they would request photo shoots. So in between all this, every car show that I would go to, I would hand out business cards that I made. I don't know if I could find any that I have, but I made business cards with my email and my photography company, and that's how I landed a bunch of private photo shoots and more gigs and more people and more connections, was physically meeting the owners of these cars that I wanted to shoot and saying, hey, here's my business card, call me if you need photography. And that's how I landed, all my clientele. And what I would do is 1 out of every 15 was a good ratio. So I didn't set my standards crazy high, but I'd hand out hundreds of business cards, and I would literally just push all my photography out on the internet as much as I could. So sure enough, after doing that for so long, you start to build a name for yourself. And of course, doing freelance work is very tough at the beginning. So what I would do is I would go to dealerships. I go to Ferrari, Lambo, Bugatti, McLaren, anything. McLaren wasn't around when I first started, but I started going to all those dealerships, just taking photos, handing out my business cards, and not just that, but shaking the hands of people who work there and telling them what I do, and just kind of implanting this thought in their head saying, hey, there's this kid who takes photos, maybe I'll need him for the future, or maybe my clients will need him for the future, and say, hey, I know a guy. I want to be that person. That's who I wanted to be. So yeah, sure enough, after doing that for so long, there was one day where, I guess in a meeting, one of my friends who worked at a dealership, he was in a meeting with his boss, and they brought up a conversation of saying, hey, we need a receptionist. And he thought in his head, hey, I know this kid Spencer that takes photos. He's about to be 18. He could probably do it part-time for fun and then transition into photography. No matter what, it was like, I want any way to get into the exotic business, any way to get my foot in the door, I'll take it. Of course, after going there so many times, I knew everyone who worked there. I knew everyone's names. I knew a lot of good people there, and thankfully Mike put in a good word for me. He said, hey, if you want to come in for an interview, we have a position open for a receptionist. And I was like, okay, I'm super down. Let's just see how it goes. So I ended up going in that next day for the interview. I didn't have great dress clothes, but I just threw on what I had, and I went into the meeting with my first boss, Ryan. Just asked me a few questions on what I could do, my potential, and my thoughts on what I really want to do as a career. And I had the interview. It felt great. I went home. I got an email the next morning that I got the job. So what I had done is I actually dropped out of high school right away. I finished early, kind of, with like early credits, but I could never attend a real college. I had to go to a community if I ever wanted to go. I don't have a high school diploma. There's a whole process I'd have to go through again to actually get back into formal education, but I'll never go that route. That's just who I am. So dropped out of high school and started working part-time as a receptionist, and it was like, my desk was in the middle of a showroom with Bugattis and Rolls Royces, and like the first day I started, my first phone call was Jay Leno, and it was just so, like, it was a whole situation from being a high school kid who partied all the time and did all this crazy stuff with all his friends to responsible adult dealing with high-end clients, football Chargers players, the highest of celebrities, people with a lot of money. I was kind of managing the first phone call that they'd bring in, and it was a lot of pressure. So the best way that I've always learned was to be thrown into something that's absolutely out of your comfort zone and build up from that. And that kind of is more comfortable with becoming uncomfortable, if that makes any sense. And that's where it all started, was nonstop networking with people that I wanted to be like, and with the people that are already in the industry that I wanted to be in. I surrounded myself with all of that all the time, and that's how I got to where I am today, was sacrifice. I didn't party a ton. I set aside a lot of time for car shows, early mornings, Saturday mornings, and I set aside some money here and there. I built my BMW I had, which was like my dream car, so I had a car to shoot, to practice on, and I had a lot of good intentions, and I had a decent amount of like ideas that can help me progress, but in the end I think it was really persistence. And that's something I'm always going to put out there, is persistence is like a really good keyword for finding a path for what you want to do. Is the consistency, the dedication, the devotion. That's why I made my company. There's a lot of factors and variables that can fall into play, but I can tell you right now, it was not as easy as it sounds. I spent a lot of time taking photos, editing, late nights, a lot of sacrifice, and I still do until this day. But my advice for anyone who's like 14 or 15 or 16, whatever, is just be patient and build your value. The biggest thing I can say to you right now is become an asset. Build value in your talent. If you have something that you're good at, become great at it. Master it, study it, learn it. The best way I had learned without formal education was YouTube. I didn't know how to tie a tie, so I'd look on YouTube. I didn't know how to do certain things, so I'd go on YouTube and say, how do I do it? And the next thing you know, you're 5 hours deep in all these tutorials and you know how to do it 10 different ways. And then you take all that knowledge you learn and you implement it into your own style, your own ideas, your own thoughts, your own ways. And that's how you create your future, and that's how you build your empire. So I'm hoping that you picked up some kind of education from that and some kind of knowledge from me. I really, it was a passion. It was a distraction from all the bullshit that I was dealing with and the stuff I didn't want to be around and the depression, like I said. And it was my escape, and it's what I had done with my passion. I executed it into a plan, into a career. And it was just a thought at one point that people actually told me I couldn't do, that people told me I wouldn't get anywhere without an education, that people would shove down my throat to go to school. I didn't want to go. I hated it. My credits in my senior year were freshman credits. And I'll never forget the day that on a projector it showed all of our grade of what grade we were in. I was a senior, or I think I was a junior, and it said grade 9, and everybody saw it. And I don't know if I was embarrassed, but it was like, I hated it so much that I dreaded waking up. I hated studying. I've never ever in my whole life read one book. I've never read a book in my life. Like, I have books here that I've bought that I've skimmed through, and I just can't pay attention. I can't do it. That's just not me. I can't do it. So there's certain ways that you can shape your life logically. I was at a point where I could afford to move out. I had a friend who offered me his house for $300 a month for 5 people living in a 2-bedroom house. And I shared a room with somebody, but it gave me that freedom to do whatever I wanted, to not have to listen to somebody else. There were times where I wanted to rely on my mom to support me and to give me that comfort, and then there were times where I was like, I don't want to go to school, I don't want to do this, I don't want to listen to anybody else, I want to do exactly what I want to do. And I couldn't do that at 17, so I waited. And at 18, it was like, okay, I'm making money, I can save, I have a job, I'm gonna just take the leap of faith and believe in my talents of becoming an asset to a business that will carry me on with stability to live a life that I want to live in any way I wanted. Like, I can do whatever I wanted to. That's what I was fighting for, is doing what I wanted to do at any time, any day, and that's what I strived for. And I got that. And it was just momentum, consistency, persistence, and believing in yourself. So if you have an idea, if you have thoughts, if you have a creative mindset, if you have a goal, there's no reason why you shouldn't be fighting for it every single day, no matter what. No matter what people say, no matter how many people judge you, no matter how many times you have to rethink it, rewrite it, replan it. There's so much out there for us to do in this world that a lot of us don't see our potential, when really anybody can do what they want. It just takes enough time and momentum and building that belief in yourself that you can do it. So I'm hoping that my story opened up a few ideas in your head to pursue what you want. If you can, send me a Snapchat right now of whatever. Send me something of your goal, your ideas, your thoughts. I'm always one to help people. I want to know that you guys liked the video. If you did, if not, thumbs down. If you did, thumbs up. I appreciate any support. Yeah, that's about it. I never step back to look at what I've done. I've just always focused on like moving forward, and you have to step back sometimes. And it's just cool to look back at some of these photos and realize what I've accomplished. I drive Lambos all the time, and I'm almost comfortable with it, which is strange. I drove a Gallardo yesterday, and I was like, whatever. I remember when it was insane to see him in person. And like, I've driven over thousands of Lamborghinis in my life, and the plans that I have for the next few years of my life, and the ideas and thoughts and the investments, I mean, it's endless. So yeah, thank you again for watching. I do appreciate it so much. Please subscribe and like, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.